One of the things that we wanted to do before we got into the nitty gritty was give you a discussion about all the things that help you to get better in golf. So if you were to name the things, John, what would be the major categories that we're seeing in this modern era of golf development?
Well, you're seeing a lot more info about getting stronger, getting more fit for golf, more mobile, faster, for sure. You're seeing some stuff about how to play the golf course smarter. You're seeing a bigger emphasis on the mental game. But we're here to help you with practicing and performing.
You think about the golf pie in terms of where players are spending their time, and we make it into a pie. And you have these little pieces to the pie that are contributing to the whole of what we'll call development and golf performance. You do have instruction, which is a foundational component, right? Which your top 30 Golf Digest for some time, PGA Master Professional. So that is your foundational wheelhouse of your expertise. And so that's really important. And then you have the strength component, which, and I talk about, or JD and I will talk about strength as a more global kind of physical movement type of descriptor, where within strength, there's range of motion, there's mobility, there's nutrition, there's those sorts of things. And then you also have one of the really helpful things, you have course strategy. So deciding where you hit your shots, whether they be from the tee or from the fairway, deciding on the approach that you're going to take on a per shot or per hole basis, as we've seen with professional players, has become really important, right, JD?
Yeah. Well, you see it pretty much every week right now. But I would say the thing is, you can have the greatest strategy in the world, but if you don't have the skills, you got to be able to drive the ball well. If you're losing two balls around, you're going to have a heck of a time shooting par. So you've got to drive the golf ball in play, have a shot at the green. You've got to hit your irons well. You've got to be getting those greens in regulation up. You know, if you're only hitting 55% of your greens in regulation from 100 shorter, you have a problem. You have a skill problem. And that's where we specialize, creating a practice program for you to develop those skills. Furthermore, you've got drive and approach shots. Those are number 1 and 1B. Super important. And you've got your putting. For instance, your 10 feet and in putting needs to be very sound. Your 3-putt percentage needs to get to where you're playing maybe several tournaments in a row, at least tournament rounds in a row, without any 3-putts. We might even say something like, okay, listen, we can just eliminate 3-putts from 30 feet and in, your scoring average goes down. And through the categories of the great game, sandside bunkers, probably not nearly as important as those three things. Chipping, yep, around the green, 40 yards and in, chipping around the green is important. But I'll tell you what, if I chip less because I'm hitting more greens, my score is going down.
So you hit on a couple important topics based on that strategy question. One is you have to have the basic skills. If you don't have the basic golf skills to execute a strategy, the strategy doesn't really mean as much. You got to be able to center face the golf ball at a relatively high frequency. So you got to be able to do these fundamental aspects of what you refer to driving approach, chipping, and putting. The relative importance is something else that you bring up that is really important, is the statistical component. And statistics has really driven golf performance at really high levels and has trickled down to the junior competitive and even the amateur level or the weekend golfer level, where knowing where you're losing strokes, that sort of thing, has become really important in golf. And so there are additional components. Those are additional components in this modern day golf world of development that can add to your progress within the game. One of the things that we'd be remiss to exclude is the advancement of golf equipment. And that's the clubs and the ball. And then just kind of briefly, can you talk about how the clubs and the balls have made a difference in people's games?
Well, I'll tell you what, that's a really good point. I got a great story for you. One of my students who's very good, he is an adult AM practice coach user and great guy. And I let him borrow my driver because he was looking at a driver similar to mine. And when I got it back from him, we had changed the settings, which I didn't catch. And we had lowered the loft and moved the heavy weight underneath the sole. It's a driver that you can change the weights. We had put the heavy weight forward. And I was out on the range and I'm hitting my irons very well. and I get my driver and it goes about 4 head high. I'm like, whoa. And I hit it a few more times and I could not get the ball off the ground. It was just going so low, like maybe carrying 200 yards. It was terrible. And then I'm like, wait a minute. And I look down and it's set. I use 11.5 degrees of loft and it's set at 10.5. It's set with the weights backwards. So I put it back where it goes. And the first ball, there it goes again. The clubs matter. They matter way more than you think. And I see an awful lot of competitive golfers that are playing with ill-fit equipment. If you can't believe the change that you can make just on the weights on the bottom, just on the shaft. If I use this one black shaft, I got no hope of getting the ball in the air. But I use the red shaft from the same company and it goes right up in the air. It's really amazing. And the golf balls, I have 100% of my girls are using one of the high spin balls from Titleist or Callaway because they're not hitting the ball, 90 miles an hour with a 7-iron. So we need help with backspin because the companies have taken a lot of backspin away from the golf ball, and the companies who make the clubs have taken a lot of backspin away. So now you have golf clubs that don't want to go high enough. They don't want to spin. So they hit a green and now the ball doesn't want to stop. And if you play in the Eastern Seaboard, the greens at my golf course are super firm. You couldn't even find a ball mark this weekend, by the way. So you can't imagine how important these golf clubs are. It's a really big deal. And it's not even that hard of a science, folks. It really isn't. If you have a launch monitor and a good fitter, it's not that hard, but it has to be done. And a lot of folks aren't adapting as their equipment as they, for instance, become more skilled. So they're more repetitive with their golf swing or faster and stronger. And now all of a sudden, the club that used to be beautiful is now hooking, 20 yards because the person's hitting it much harder. The shaft is flexing differently. So it's important as well.
Yeah, the immediate changes and effects that you get from club fitting is pretty darn amazing, very gratifying to see, especially with the launch monitor tools. But I think it's a reflection at this day and time. It's a really good time to be playing and trying to get better at golf because we have all these tools available. You can get with a really good trainer, and the trainer might be able to identify kind of movement deficiencies that are not allowing you to move the way your instructor wants. You can have a really good instructor that gets you hitting the ball proficiently within that lesson and give you some really good ideas about how you should be moving relative to who you are as a player, who you are physically. Right now, you have really good statistical tools and strategy tools to identify, well, should you be hitting the driver off the tee, part of the green? Should you be trying to target? And then you have the equipment that we just mentioned. So if you think about all those things that are trying to help you become the best player, now think to yourself, and I'll present this question to you, JD, is if we look at people's time in golf, playing golf, developing, trying to get better in golf, it's always good to sit back and say, well, where do I spend the most time? Or where do you spend the most time on this development journey of golf? Where do people usually spend the most time? What do you think the top two are?
Without a doubt, it's play and practice. And those times need to be used really appropriately. To your point, folks, when they play, they always play as though it's a tournament condition. And then what happens is they're always in sort of this high stakes performance mode, but then they don't use the golf course to help them learn and improve their skills quite as rapidly. That's part of our practice coach program is some on-course practice that is essential for learning to transfer your skills to the golf course. So if I'm in college and I'm at a great school and we relentlessly qualify for the next tournament, we play 6 rounds or 9 rounds of qualifying, and we're in the high stakes, constant performance, well, sometimes people can get worse because they're not actually using the time to improve their skills. They're just hanging on for dear life. So that recipe is really important. Then you only have so much time for practice. We don't have unlimited time. What we do at practices could be a whole lot more effective. And I think, Will, you have something to say about practice performance versus actual play performance. Will, you've trained Olympic medal